Hello and welcome to Qubit Education. In this lesson we are going to learn how to compare and contrast for functional skills English. So what we're going to do is understand the words compare and contrast, so hopefully by the end of this session you will understand what they mean. You will learn some vocabulary to help you compare and contrast, so when you get a question you'll be able to do this, and we'll look at some example exam questions to help you. Okay, so what does compare and contrast actually mean? Well, comparing something means that something is similar. We're going to say how something is similar or the same. Okay, we could also say how something is different. So, for example, if you were comparing two different cars, you could say they are both the same colour, but you might also say that one has a higher engine than the other. Okay, so you are stating similarities and differences. When we are contrasting something, we are saying how they are definitely different. Okay, there's quite a big difference probably. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples of comparing and contrasting and how you can use vocabulary to explain what you mean. So for example, this first one, my brother and I both like swimming. So we've said here both, okay, we've compared them, all right, it's a similarity in this case, similarity, okay. My brother and I both like swimming. We're saying how it's the same, how they're the same. However, in this one, we've said, I like bowling, but my brother likes tennis. So we've contrasted there. I mean, you can still call it comparison, but I'm going to use the word contrast. They're different. It's a difference. I'm going to write the word difference as well. There's a difference between the two brothers. Okay, they are different. So one likes bowling, but the other likes tennis. Look at the vocabulary we're using here. If you're not aware, that's how you can compare some things. Here's a really nice one where we've used both comparing and contrasting in one sentence. These phones are equally amazing. Okay, they're saying how they're both good. However, this mobile plan costs 5p per minute, whereas, okay, so we're now about to change. We're going to say something different now because we've said the word whereas. That one gives you up to 800 minutes per month for a fixed price. Okay, so we've then contrasted. We've used the difference. All right. Now again, this one's nice. We've used both again. Our bosses are both great. Sorry, I forgot to highlight both. But our bosses are both great. We've said how the bosses are both really good. His boss allows him to work from home, unlike mine. Okay, so another way of comparing, unlike, okay, not like mine. Now here's a particularly good one for functional skills and comparing texts. So as you probably are aware, in your functional skills exam, you'll be asked to compare two different texts. So here it says, whereas the purpose of text 1 is to inform, text 3 is more persuasive. So it's saying here that text 1 is to give you information. Okay, information. Trying to write properly so you can see. However, text 3 is trying to persuade you to do something. Persuade you to do something, probably buy something. Okay, that's usually why something is persuasive. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rush. So there's some really nice examples of using vocabulary where we have compared and contrasted. And we're going to have a little go at a question in a second. Now, if you're finding it difficult to compare and contrast two texts, you could use a Venn diagram such as this one. So, as an example, if you wanted to compare a BMW, I mean, I know there's different types of BMW, with a Mercedes, okay, we could say, okay, how are they the same and we would put those in the middle. Let's pretend that both of these cars are blue. Okay, so both of these cars are blue. Both of them have air conditioning. We'll put aircon. Okay, but the Mercedes has a 1.8 litre engine and the BMW has a 1.6 litre engine. We can show then in this Venn diagram how the Mercedes is different from the BMW and how the BMW is different from the Mercedes. But in the middle, we would say how they are the same. Now, obviously, you won't have time in your exam to do this, but if you do practice doing this, in your revision time, then it will make things much quicker for you in the actual test, and you'll be able to pick things out much quicker. And I want you to start getting used to picking things out of texts really quickly, and we are going to do that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a text about London and Washington DC, and we're going to use this Venn diagram to write down some similarities and some differences between the two. Okay, so you can find these texts and the entire resources sheet in the information below as a link. But you can also find it on the website, cubaeducation.com. Okay. So it says here, comparing and contrasting London and Washington DC. So let's start reading it through. I'm going to highlight a few things that I think are important. Feel free to do that yourself on your sheet. And we'll see what you get at the end. Both Washington DC and London are capital cities of English-speaking countries, and yet they offer vastly different experiences to their residents and visitors. Comparing and contrasting the two cities based on their history, their culture, and their residents show how different and similar the two are. Both cities are rich in world and national history, though they developed on very different timelines. London, for example, has a history that dates back over 2,000 years. It was part of the Roman Empire and known for the similar name, Londinium. It was not only one of the northernmost points of the Roman Empire, but also the epicenter of the British Empire, where it held significant global influence from the early 16th century on through the early 20th century. Washington, D.C., on the other hand, has only formally existed since the late 18th century. Though Native Americans inhabited the land several thousand years earlier, and settlers inhabited the land as early as the 16th century, the city did not become the capital of the United States until the 1970s. Okay. Now, I understand that this might seem like a really difficult text, but as long as you read through and pick out those differences and similarities, it's okay that you might not understand everything. Okay, if you find some of the words too difficult or the way it's written not quite to your liking, just go through and try and find what's different. So we've just said there that it did not become the capital until the 1790s. Sorry, I put 1970s. That was a mistake. 1790s. From that point onward to today, however, Washington, D.C. has increasingly maintained significant global influence, meaning it has a lot of influence over the way we see the world and the way we buy our items, etc. Even though both cities have different histories, so we can say different histories, they have both held and continue to hold significant social influence in the economic and cultural global spheres. Again, even if you don't understand what that means, we know that it's something that they both do. Okay, so we know that that's a similarity, whether we understand what that means or not. Okay, we know that America and London have significant social influence, especially in the cultural global sphere, because we use American and English technology all the time. It's very rare that, people use WhatsApp and Facebook and things. It's very rare that they would use other apps. Okay, I know people do, such as Telegram and things. But socially and culturally, America and the UK have a large influence on people. Both Washington DC and London offer a wide array of museums that harbour many of the world's most prized treasures. While Washington DC has the National Gallery of Art and several other Smithsonian galleries, London's art scene and galleries have definite edge in this category. From the Tate Modern to the British National Gallery, London's art ranks among the world's best. This difference and advantage has much to do with London and Britain's historical depth compared to that of the United States. So it has a longer history. We know that anyway. We read that earlier. London has a much richer past than Washington DC and consequently has a lot more material to pull from when arranging its collections. Both cities have thriving theatre districts, but again, London wins this comparison too, both in quantity and quality of theatre choices. With regard to other cultural places like restaurants, pubs and bars, both cities are very comparable. Both have a wide selection of expensive, elegant restaurants, as well as a similar amount of global and national chains. Meaning like chains in restaurants, like TGI Fridays and things. We have them here and in the US. While London may be better known for its pubs and taste in beer, DC offers a different bar-going experience, with clubs and pubs that tend to stay open later than their British counterparts. The DC nightlife tends to be less reserved overall, so it sounds like quite fun to go out there. I hope that you've been underlining or picking out similarities and differences as I've been going through that. We have one more paragraph to read, and then we'll start putting it into a Venn diagram. Both cities also share and differ in cultural diversity and the cost of living. Both cities share a very expensive cost of living, both in terms of housing and shopping. Okay, so it's quite expensive to live in London, as you probably know, and in Washington. A downtown one-bedroom apartment in DC can easily cost $1,800 per month. That's a lot. And a similar flat in London may double that amount. That's an incredible amount of money. These high costs create socio-economic disparity among the residents, meaning that there's quite a lot of inequality in the areas. Okay, and if you visited Washington or London, you would see that. Although both cities' residents are predominantly wealthy, both have significantly large population of poor and homeless. Okay, and that is noticeable if you go there. Perhaps the most significant difference between the resident demographics is the racial makeup. Washington, D.C. is a minority-majority city, according to this text, which means the majority of its citizens are races other than white. Not that that matters. I think it's good to have a nice, diverse range of people in a city. In 2009, according to the US Census, 55% of DC residents were classified as Black or African American, and 35% of its residents were classified as white. London, by contrast, has very few minorities. In 2006, 70% of its population was white, while only 10% was Black. The racial demographic differences between the cities is drastic. Okay. It then goes on to say, finally, even though Washington, D.C. and London are major capital cities of English-speaking countries in the Western world, they have many differences along with their similarities. They have vastly different histories, art, cultures, and racial demographics, but they remain similar in their cost of living and socio-economic disparity. Okay, so let's move on to putting some of these similarities and differences into the Venn diagram. So hopefully you've got your texts in front of you, because now I'm going to put the Venn diagram on the screen and I'm going to have to get rid of the lines so that you can see what goes in there. All right, hopefully if you would like to pause the video and either you should again have this Venn diagram in your pack, but if you don't have it and want to draw it out, pause the video and add some things in. So first of all, I'm going to put in London and Washington DC at the top of each side of the Venn diagram, so we can start putting in the differences for London and for Washington, and then we can put the similarities in the middle. Okay, so if you've had a go at that, let's look at what we've got then. So they both speak English. So in London and Washington, I wouldn't say that everybody speaks English, but the language spoken in both countries is predominantly English. Okay, again, it's nice to see a diverse range of languages spoken anywhere, I think. They both have lots of history. Washington, D.C., well, it is the capital, but it wasn't the capital until later. Okay, so maybe I should have put that later. All right. London was part of the Roman Empire and Washington, D.C. was not. The nightlife is less reserved in Washington, meaning it's open later. There's lots of different bar-going experiences that you can have, partly due to the vast, the different amounts of cultures that are there. In London, the art ranks in the world's best. And both cities have significant global, social and cultural influence. Okay, again, we see a lot of American movies and things like that. So, and that is across the world. Washington appears to be more diverse, but London has a much richer past. The cost of living is very similar, meaning very high. London seems to have better theatres, well known for bars and pubs. Okay, so if you got any more, that's absolutely fine. You can find as many as you want to. Okay, so this is how you would use the Venn diagram. Now, just as an example sentence here, I'm going to just write down, let me see if I can find I want a nice colour that's not going to be. So, if you had to tell me in sentence form, the differences and similarities between London and Washington, D.C., I'm just going to do one sentence. I might say something like, whilst both cities have a lot of history, and have a similar cost of living, London has a richer past, being part of the Roman Empire. I'm just going to carry on down here. However, Washington, D.C. is more diverse and has more, I would use the word entertainment. And bar-going experiences due to this cultural diversity. I can't fit it on. Due to this, I'm going to have to write it over here, sorry, cultural diversity, okay? So I just wanted to add that in there. Sorry, that wasn't planned for me to write a sentence, so I'm sorry if it's not very well written. I will add that sentence at the bottom of the description, so you've got it written down in text form rather than my handwriting. It might be a little bit too scrawly, if that's a word. Okay, so let's just read that again. Whilst both cities have a lot of history and have a similar cost of living, London has a richer past, being part of the Roman Empire. However, Washington DC is more diverse and has more entertainment and bar-going experiences due to this cultural diversity. Okay, so obviously this cultural diversity bit is supposed to go on the end there. Sorry about that. Okay, so what we've done there is we've looked through a text and we've highlighted the similarities and the differences and we've put them into that Venn diagram. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at an actual exam question, and we're going to put that, we're going to write some actual answers that you would need for an exam question, okay? And they are written as text, so you won't have to worry about my handwriting. All right, let's move on. So, exam style questions. We have got two texts. We've got this one here, and this one is about a documentary called Drowning in Plastic, just there, okay? Then we're going to look at this one, which is just basically a leaflet about going plastic free, okay? So I'm going to read through both texts. Again, you are going to hopefully read through them with me. And then there's a couple of questions to go through. So there's this question here. You've got these written down in your pack. Question 15, which I've just taken from a recent functional skills exam paper, is about document 1 and 2, which we've got, and you need to refer to both when answering the question. This one will talk about different views on how the problem of plastic waste can be solved, and you'll need to use some supporting evidence from both documents. Okay, that's that question. Okay, I've got the answer up, but I'm not going to show you yet. And then the next question is asking for one similarity or difference in the way that language is used to convey the views in documents 1 and 2. Again, you need evidence to answer that. So what we're going to do is go through each source text, which you would get in the exam. Again, you're probably quite familiar with how the exams are laid out. But let's start by going through this one then. Read through it with me. In her new documentary, Drowning in Plastic, wildlife biologist Liz Bonin has called for an immediate ban of single-use plastics in Britain and accused industries and politicians of not doing enough to tackle pollution. Okay? Not doing enough to tackle pollution. Speaking ahead of the documentary, Bonin said that the problem of plastic in the world's oceans would not be fixed by consumers simply saying no to straws. Okay, it would not be fixed. Drowning in Plastic comes a year after Sir David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2 and investigates the effect plastic material is having on marine animals. When it comes to all single-use products, I just think if we can live without them, we should live without them. Okay, she's saying that there, said Bonin in an interview with the Radio Times. There is no kind of middle ground anymore. So can we live without plastic bottles? Yes, we can. That's another quote from her. The documentary will look at the dangers and struggles of wildlife in the ocean and the extent of the problem of our polluted seas. Citing Costa Rica's ban on all single-use plastic by 2021, Bonin said the UK's slower action on plastic pollution was not good enough. I have to ask, why isn't the UK doing that? She said. Why isn't the UK going plastic free? Some of our plastic is absolutely a valuable part of our society. The question there is, do we make up that plastic with less toxic chemicals? Also, can we make that plastic realistically recyclable? 40% of the plastic that's prevalent in our society is single-use stuff that we can absolutely live without. If Costa Rica can do it, why can't we do it immediately? This phasing out conversation makes me angry after everything I've seen. There is no more time to phase anything out. So she's getting quite angry here. Okay, she's really wants us to go plastic free. I agree. I think we use too much plastic, but anyway. The presenter said attempts by the general public to limit their use of single-use plastic, such as straws and coffee cups, hugely laudable. But the obligation to change needs to be with the governments. Okay, so it's okay to say that we need to change as the consumers, the people, the everyday people, but she's saying there that the obligation needs to be with the governments because they can make the real changes. She then goes on to say, I do feel that the onus has been placed a lot on the consumer, meaning us, and that's only part of the problem, she said. So, for example, if you're going to increase the plastic bag charge to 10p from 5p again, the onus is on the consumer. Why is the industry still making plastic bags? She's got a point. Why is America investing $180 billion in new plastic factories? I don't think it's going to be fixed just from consumers saying no to straws. And you know, she has got a point there. How on earth could we stop using these plastics and things if they're still being made and our food is still in them? Figures released in July revealed that plastic bag sales have fallen by 86% since the introduction of the 5p levy in 2015. Meaning that why do we need these new plastic factories if there's nothing to sell? But okay, so that is the first source, talking about how, you know, we could change and what needs to change to go plastic free. Okay, hopefully you've got a few things written down there and you've looked at your questions and you think you might know what to write. Let's look at text 2. Again, keep those questions in front of you that are in the pack and you'll be able to try and answer them as I'm going through this. Here's text 2, not as long. Plastic free, help us save the sea, go plastic free. Already, that's quite good. Help us save the sea, go plastic free. So we've also got here on this leaflet like a supporting our work section where you can donate, saying that we're a small charity with a huge task ahead of us. We really want to make single-use plastic a thing of the past, but we need your help. We would kindly ask that you support our work by offering a small monthly donation, and then you can choose the amount to donate there. You can log in to edit your recurring donation anytime. Thank you. All right, and then it's got some information. So let's start here. Plastic is all around us. The statistics say it all. Over 300 million tonnes of plastic are produced globally each year. 500,000 plastic straws are used every day. 4 trillion plastic bags are used worldwide annually, meaning every year. Every year, that's a lot, isn't it? Sorry, I can't write very well. Plastic production. Roughly half of the plastic produced annually is destined for single-use products. It is truly shocking. So when they say single-use products, they mean like, you know, when you go to the shop and you buy like a plastic bowl of salad or those like meal deals in those little plastic containers. That's all single-use plastic. It is estimated that around 8.5 billion plastic straws are thrown away every year in the UK alone. Not to mention the millions of bottles, coffee cups, crisp packets, plastic bags and takeaway dishes. You've probably thrown away several single-use items today without even realising it. Okay, he's quite persuasive there, isn't he? With his language. He's kind of trying to make you think about it. He also uses the word you, which is, telling you, the reader, as we're reading it, making us feel a little bit guilty, which is a good thing. We should stop using so much plastic. As individuals, it is extremely important that we recognise that it is our responsibility, is roping us in there, again, to make changes which will help our oceans for years to come. Every piece of plastic ever produced still exists somewhere today. Oceans and marine life. Sorry, just before I go on to that, this is quite a stark statement. Every piece of plastic ever produced still exists somewhere today. It's quite sad. Just think where that is. Oceans and marine life. Single-use plastics are small but have a large impact, with more than 8 million tonnes of plastic waste ending up in our oceans each year. This is not only harmful to marine birds and animals, which can end up being choked, poisoned and entangled by the plastic, but it can also have an impact on human health. As a study in 2017 found that plastic microparticles can get into the flesh of fish eaten by humans. So it's time for change. Manufacturers and businesses should take some responsibility for the plastic waste they generate and offer consumers more sustainable products and packaging. However, as individuals, we are the ones who hold the power to make the biggest change. If we all keep on buying single-use plastic products, businesses will only keep on selling them. Every one of us needs to say no to single-use plastic. Unless we all take action, then the crisis we are facing is only going to get worse. Okay, so like a final statement there. All right, that was quite emotive, we say. We say the word emotive because he's used a lot of language in there that's really made us think. He's given some facts and some statistics that's really made us think about, using single-use plastics. Okay, let's look at the exam questions then. So, question 15, just because I've taken it from a paper, is about both document 1 and 2. Make sure you refer to both documents when answering the question. Lisbonin and Plastic Free offer different views on how the problem of plastic waste can be solved. Using one piece of supporting evidence from each document to compare how these views differ. Use one piece of supporting evidence from each document to compare how these views differ. Now, if you want to pause the video and just have a go at that question, it's 4 marks. Think about what that might mean. Okay, let me change my colour pen because that's not very good. 4 marks. Think about what that might mean. Maybe 2 points for each, or maybe 1 point plus some evidence. Okay, the marks give you a good idea of what to do. So I would suggest with the marks, I would suggest with the marks we would go make your point and then give some evidence. Oops. Okay, that's for Liz, for the Lisbonian one. And then do it again for the Plastic Free. Okay, so if you want to have a go, pause the video and then we'll go through the answer. Okay, let's start. So if you've had a go, let's see what I've written down and see if you've got something similar. So the first thing I've put down is, Liz believes that although the consumer must take some responsibility for the amount of plastic that is used, it is the larger manufacturers that will create the biggest impact in terms of reducing plastic use and waste. So yes, she does say that we should be responsible, but she also says that it's actually the biggest impact is going to come from those big manufacturers. She says individuals can do it, but it's only part of the problem. Companies should stop making them. Now, I've not quoted a massive quote here. What I've done is I've written part of what she said, and then I've done this thing here, these 3 dots called an ellipsis. Okay, and then I've quoted another bit of what she said. Because I didn't need to write the whole thing, but that gets my point across, and that's my evidence. Okay? And then for Plastic Free, I've said, the author of Plastic Free believes the opposite. He believes that the power to change the effects is in the individual's hands. He points out that as individuals, we are the ones who hold the power to make the biggest change. Now, you could have also said in there that both authors or both people within these texts, Liz and the author of Plastic Free, both think that there is some responsibility to be placed on the everyday person. However, their opinions differ because Liz mainly blames the larger manufacturers, but Plastic Free mainly thinks it's the individual that has the power to make the biggest change. So you could have said that as well. Okay, there are many different ways to have written that. But then you would have got 2 marks for this bit and 2 marks for this bit, and that would have been in total your 4 marks for the question. So well done if you got something similar. Let's have a look at the final question. We're almost finished. This video has gone on a little bit longer than I assumed, but hopefully you've got a lot out of it. So now for this one's a little bit tricky because you might have to go back and watch another one of my videos on language techniques. Give one similarity or difference in the way language is used to convey the views in documents 1 and 2. Support your answer with evidence from each document. So rather than a difference, I've chosen to do a similarity. If you've chosen a difference, that's fine. But it's asking you to show a similarity or a difference in the way that language has been used. I did point out a few language sections, when we were reading it. I said that the guy who did plastic free, I said that he was quite emotional. He used emotive language. Okay, so pause the video again, see if you can think of a few sentences. I'm sorry I've not put the marks on this one, but I do think it was a 4 marker. Meaning again, point and evidence for each person or each document. Okay? It says here, support your answer with evidence from each document. Okay? Okay, pause the video, have a go, and we'll go through it. Okay, let's go. So, I've written here, both texts use emotive language and facts to convey their opinions. So I've gone with the similarity like I mentioned. Liz Bonin uses a more angry tone, saying that there is no kind of middle ground anymore. So she's still emotive, it's anger. She also points out that the phasing out conversation makes me angry after everything I've seen. There is no more time to phase anything out. The writer quotes Liz Bonin's facts to make them understand how bad the situation is and to try to trigger emotions. For example, she says, 40% of the plastic that is prevalent in our society is single-use stuff that we can absolutely live without. Okay, so we have explained here that she is angry. We've explained that it was emotive language. She's used an angry tone. We've used a quote here. Okay, a quote here. And then, And then we've explained how she's used facts. The writer quotes Liz Bonin's facts. Okay, just here. So we mentioned that at the top, and then again, to make them understand how bad the situation is. So then I've put in an example and 40% of plastic. So that's a fact. So I've used 2 quotes that have given us emotive language and 1 that's given me a fact. So that's quite a lot for the 2 marks, but better safe than sorry. Might as well put more in than not enough. Then finally, for plastic free, I put down the author of Plastic Free takes a less angry but still emotive and factual approach to his writing, stating that animals end up being choked, poisoned or entangled in the plastic. Okay, so that's an emotive quote. He's making you, that sounds awful, doesn't it? They're being choked, poisoned and entangled. It's very emotive. He goes on to say, but it can also have an impact on human health, as a study in 2017 found that plastic microparticles can get into the flesh of fish eaten by humans. So that's also a fact because it's from a study. This scares the reader and makes them think about themselves. Again, that's probably about right for that one. So you didn't have to write about facts and emotive language, because that probably would have given you even more marks and probably taken up a little bit more time. You could have just written about emotive language and said, Liz uses emotive language, this is how. And then the author of Plastic Free uses emotive language, this is how. Obviously, I've said Liz Bonin uses emotive language and facts, and so does the author of Plastic Free. So it's you know, probably a little bit more than what you have needed to do, but again, better to be safe than sorry. And so I hope you got a lot out of that question. Okay, so hopefully then we have completed all of these learning outcomes. Do we understand the words compare and contrast? Okay, we have compared 2 documents. We have compared, well, actually 3 documents. So we have compared London and Washington and said how they are similar and different. And then we've gone on to compare 2 documents and what they talk about and how they use language. 1 similarity or difference, it said in that last question. We went through a little bit of vocabulary on how to compare and contrast, such as saying words like whereas, however, both, but, okay? And we've looked at some example exam questions. So I really hope you enjoyed that lecture, and I hope it's helped you understand how to compare and contrast in your functional skills English exams. If you would like some more resources on functional skills English, then please visit the website www.cubiteducation.com. Thank you very much for using Cubit Education, and I hope to see you next time.